Okay, I want you to picture a mirror.
All right.
But not just any mirror. I don't mean the one in your hallway that you glance at before you leave the house.
Okay.
Imagine a mirror that was crafted back in the 1830s. A genuine antique. But here's the spooky part.
Oh.
When you look into this nearly 200-year-old mirror today, right now, the reflection looking back at you isn't some person from the 19th century.
It's you.
It's you. It's us.
Yeah.
It's the person scrolling on their phone, the person anxious about their career, the one wondering why they feel so isolated despite being connected to everyone online.
That is a very evocative, and I have to say, a slightly unsettling way to start this.
But it's accurate, isn't it?
It's incredibly accurate. And the craftsman of that mirror,
Yeah.
that would be Alexis de Tocqueville.
We are back with another deep dive, and today we are tackling an absolute giant. We're opening up democracy in America.
A big one.
A huge one. But, and I want to be really, really clear about this from the start, we are not doing the standard high school history class version.
No memorizing dates.
No dates, no talk about the geography of the Mississippi River. We're going way deeper. We're focusing on the historical critical edition, specifically Volume 4.
Which is the part where Tocqueville really stops looking at maps and laws, and he starts looking directly into the human soul.
Exactly. And what makes this particular deep dive so special, I think, is that we aren't just looking at the final polished text that you'd find on a library shelf. We are digging into what he himself called his rubbish.
His poubelle. That's the French term he used.
What does that mean exactly?
It's his rough drafts, his marginalia, the frantic notes he scribbled to himself while he was trying to articulate these massive, almost overwhelming ideas.
I just love that concept, because usually when you read a classic work of philosophy, it feels so finished.
Like it was handed down from a mountain on stone tablets.
Perfect, final. But here, in the rubbish, you actually see him sweating, you see him doubting himself.
Oh, you really do. You see him struggling to find the right words to describe a future that hadn't even happened yet. He wasn't just describing the America of the 1830s or 40s. He was trying to prophesy the psychological state of the 21st century.
Wow.
He literally writes these notes to himself, things like, I need a new word for this because the old words like tyranny or oppression, they just didn't fit the new thing he was seeing on the horizon.
And the picture he paints is, well, it's complex, to say the least. It's not the land of the free bumper sticker version of democracy we all know.
Not at all.
It's a warning. A warning about a gentle monster, a kind of oppression that doesn't look like the violent tyrannies of the past.
It's the prophecy of soft despotism. But, and this is key, to understand that nightmare, we first have to understand the dream. We have to grasp how equality of conditions, which is his main term for this whole democratic state, how it changes everything, how we feel, how we love, even how we work.
So that's the mission for this deep dive. We're going to trace that path. We'll follow Tocqueville's logic from, believe it or not, the softening of our hearts.
All the way to the narrowing of our ambitions.
And finally, to this quiet administrative despotism that he feared most of all.
Precisely. It's a journey.
Okay, so let's set the stage before we really get into the weeds. Tocqueville is constantly, and I mean constantly, comparing two worlds. It's the lens for everything he writes.
The aristocratic world and the democratic world.
Right.
And we should be clear, this isn't just about kings versus presidents. It's much deeper than that. It's about the entire psychological structure of reality.
The operating system of society.
That's a great way to put it.
Yep.
In the aristocratic world, the world Tocqueville was born into, everyone is fixed. You are in a caste, you have a distinct rank. If you're born a peasant, well, you die a peasant. If you're a duke, you're always a duke.
Yeah.
The universe has this rigid, unchangeable structure.
And then comes the democratic world.
And everything becomes fluid. The stars fall from the sky, so to speak. Individuals are suddenly equal, but, and this is the crucial part, they're also isolated.
There are no more castes to hold you in your place.
Which means you're free, yes, but you're also completely alone.
And that isolation, that's what changes everything. Let's unpack the first big shift he talks about. The softening of our hearts and our mores.
Mores, our customs and habits.
He argues that as we become more equal, we become milder. Now, when I hear mild, I think of salsa. What does he actually mean by that?
He means we become more empathetic. But his theory on why we become empathetic is, well, it's fascinating, and it's also a little bit cynical.
How so?
It's a theory of imagination. Tocqueville observes that in an aristocracy, the different castes, let's say the nobility and the peasantry, are so fundamentally distinct that they almost view each other as different species.
Different species. That sounds extreme.
It is extreme, but you can see it in the literature of the time. He actually quotes Madame de Sévigné, who was a brilliant, sophisticated French noblewoman from the 1600s.
Okay.
She's writing a letter to her daughter about a tax revolt in Brittany. The government cracked down hard. They started hanging peasants, putting them on the wheel.
Horrific stuff.
Truly horrific. And she describes the hangings, people being quartered with this breezy, lighthearted tone. She's actually making jokes about it.
So was she just a psychopath?
See, that's the thing. Tocqueville says absolutely not. To her family, to her friends, to her equals, she was incredibly kind. She was loyal, sensitive. She would weep if her friend caught a fever.
But the peasants.
She literally could not see the peasants as the same type of being as herself. She couldn't project her own feelings, her own pain into their bodies. There was this invisible wall of empathy that just stopped at the edge of her caste.
It's a failure of imagination. She couldn't look at them and think, that could be me.
Exactly. But then democracy arrives. Equality starts breaking down those walls, and suddenly everyone is similar. When you see a stranger suffering, even if they're poor and you're rich, deep down, that they're a human being just like you can imagine yourself in their shoes.
So we become nicer because we can see ourselves in other people.
We become milder, yes. We don't want to cause pain because we can vividly imagine feeling that pain ourselves. It's like a mirror neuron response, but on a huge societal level.
But there's a catch. Right. I remember this from his draft.
There is. He adds a really important nuance in his notes. He says this doesn't necessarily make us more devoted or, heroic in our charity. We help each other because of a sort of tacit agreement of mutual weakness.
Mutual weakness. That phrase really stuck with me.
It's a key phrase. In a democracy, I help you out today because I know that tomorrow, in this chaotic, fluid economy, I might be the one who needs help. We are both equally vulnerable to the shifting tides of fortune.
It's not the divine duty of a lord protecting his serf because God ordained it.
Not at all. It's just two people in a lifeboat.
I'll row today, you row tomorrow, because if we don't, we're both going to drown.
Exactly. It's practical, it's mild, it is, at its heart, contractual.
And that idea of the contract leads directly into how we work. Tocqueville spends a ton of time analyzing the relationship between masters and servants.
Which for us is basically employers and employees.
Right. And this is one of the most deeply sociological parts of his work, I think.
It really is. In an aristocracy, he says, the servant and the master are like two separate nations. A servant's family might serve a master's family for generations. They're like these two parallel lines that never meet as equals, but they also never separate.
There's a strange kind of intimacy there.
There is a hierarchy of affection and duty that is permanent. The servant actually identifies with the master's glory. If the master wins a battle, the servant feels pride.
But in America, in the democracy that he saw, all that is just gone.
Completely gone. In a democracy, servitude is just a contract, a commercial exchange. I agree to sell you my labor for X number of hours a day.
And during those hours, one person commands and the other obeys.
Right. But the moment the clock strikes 5,
the spell is broken.
The spell is broken. We're just two citizens again, two equal citizens. The servant doesn't feel inferior in his soul. He's just in a temporary state of employment. He doesn't love the master, and the master doesn't really protect the servant. It's purely transactional.
But Tocqueville points out a real danger here. He calls it the transitional period. And honestly, I think anyone who's ever worked in a dysfunctional office is going to recognize this.
Yes, this is the danger zone. It's what happens when the laws become democratic, but the manners, the customs, are still clinging to the old aristocratic world.
It's a culture clash.
It's when the instincts of democracy, that gut feeling of I'm as good as you, clash with the lingering memories of aristocracy.
So the boss, the master, still expects that old school deference.
Right. The master wants to be treated like a lord. He doesn't just want your labor, he wants your respect. But the servant has that democratic spirit. He refuses to give it. He's thinking, hey, I'm just here for the paycheck, buddy.
And that creates friction.
A lot of it. The master becomes demanding and harsh because he feels his authorities insecure. The servant becomes recalcitrant and rebellious. It's this chaotic, painful period before society finally settles into the new contractual mildness.
It's interesting that he ultimately sees this contractual relationship as being orderly. Maybe not affectionate, but at least it's clear.
It has clear rules.
But the place where he really sees affection growing is inside the family. This part really surprised me. You always hear about traditional values and how old school families were the peak of closeness. But Tocqueville says democracy actually makes families tighter.
He does, and it absolutely flies in the face of what a lot of cultural conservatives might expect. Tocqueville's argument is that in an aristocracy, the family isn't a home, it's a political institution. And the father is a magistrate.
A magistrate. You mean like a judge?
Effectively, yes. He holds the power of the state within the four walls of his own house. He controls the property, the lineage, the political alliances, the marriages of his children.
So he's dictating who his son marries to increase the family's power and influence.
Exactly. The relationship he has with his sons is formal, it's respectful, and it's often very cold.
He's the CEO of the family, not really the dad.
That's a perfect way to put it. He is the patriarch.
Hmm.
But democracy comes along and he just destroys that political power.
Yeah.
The state steps in and says, no, the father doesn't rule the son like a king. The son is a citizen too.
He loses his absolute right to command.
He does. But Tocqueville says something beautiful here. He says that as the social bond loosens, the natural bond tightens.
Because they're not playing roles anymore, they're just a father and a son.
Precisely. When the son doesn't have to obey the father because of the law, but he chooses to listen to him out of experience and affection, the entire relationship changes. It becomes sweet, as he puts it. It becomes intimate and familiar.
He notices that in democratic families, you see fathers and sons just talking.
Talking with a freedom and a warmth that would be absolutely scandalous in a rigid, formal aristocracy.
And he ties this directly to inheritance laws, doesn't he? This whole idea of primogeniture versus partition.
Yes, that's the legal mechanism driving the psychological change.
Yeah.
In aristocracy, you have primogeniture. The eldest son gets everything. The estate, the title, the money.
Why did they do that?
To keep the house strong, to keep the family's power and property consolidated over generations. But it creates this terrible jealousy between brothers. The younger ones envy the older one. The older one often looks down on the younger ones.
But in a democracy, you split the pot.
The patrimony is divided. Everyone gets a share. Now, this breaks down the family line. That obsession with your ancestors and the future of the estate kind of crumbles. But it forces the siblings to mix and interact as equals.
They have a shared interest.
A shared interest. The family becomes less of a dynasty and more of a personal support network.
So let's recap where we are. We've got softer hearts, sweeter families, and work relationships that are colder but, clearer.
On the surface, it sounds pretty good.
It sounds like a nice place to live. But Tocqueville is the absolute master of the yes but. And this brings us to segment 2, the paradox of ambition.
This is where his psychological analysis gets much sharper and I think a little bit darker. Tocqueville looks around America and he sees a paradox. On the one hand, everyone is ambitious.
Everyone wants to rise.
There's this constant movement, a universal restlessness. Nobody is content to just sit still in their station.
But,
he says, you almost never see great ambition. You don't see those towering, world-altering ambitions that you saw in aristocratic or revolutionary times.
you don't see people trying to become Alexander the Great.
No. Or trying to rewrite the fundamental laws of existence. That kind of grand, epic ambition seems to be missing.
But why is that? It seems counterintuitive. If everyone is free to rise, shouldn't we have more Napoleons? Shouldn't we have more Caesars?
You would think so.
Yeah.
But Tocqueville identifies what we could call the crowd problem.
The crowd problem.
Yeah. Imagine a theater. In an aristocracy, the front row is reserved for the nobles. They start there. If you're born a duke, you have the resources, the education, the connections, the platform to dream huge right from day one.
You start the race on third base?
Exactly. But in a democracy,
Everyone starts at the back of the room.
everyone enters at the back, and everyone is pushing and shoving to get forward at the same time. The competition is incredibly fierce, but it's a competition of inches, not miles.
He has that great line, something like, the front row is always full.
That's the one. The front row is always full. In a democracy, you have to spend the first half of your life just clearing an endless series of small hurdles.
You have to get the degree, then get the entry-level job.
Save for the deposit on a house, get the little promotion.
So by the time you're actually in a position to do something truly great,
You're tired. Your spirit is exhausted by the petty friction of daily competition. You spend all your energy on the small stuff. So you settle.
you settle for well-being instead of glory.
That's the core of it. Tocqueville predicts a society of people who are constantly striving, but they're striving for a slightly bigger house, a slightly better job title. not for the grand transformation of humanity.
It's the shift from the heroic to the comfortable.
Perfectly put.
Yeah.
And this ties directly into his concept of honor, which is another area where he just completely flips the script on us.
Oh, this section was fascinating. He redefines honor completely. He doesn't talk about it as some noble, timeless virtue. He treats it like a sociologist.
He does. He basically says honor is just the specific, peculiar code of whatever class happens to be in charge. It's a tool.
So in feudalism...
Who ruled?
Yeah.
The warriors. The knights. So what was honor? It was the set of virtues that helped that warrior caste survive and thrive.
Bravery, loyalty to your lord.
Being incredibly touchy about personal insults.
Right. Violence was often seen as honorable. If someone insulted your reputation, you had to fight them in a duel.
You had to. But what was shameful? Work. Commerce. A nobleman who stooped to starting a business was seen as dishonored.
But in a democracy, the ruling class is, well, it's everyone. It's the majority. It's the commercial class.
Right. So honor shifts to value the things that help commerce succeed.
Okay, so what does democratic honor look like?
Reliability, hard work, paying your debts on time, courage in business ventures. In the Middle Ages, going bankrupt might be unfortunate, but running away from a duel was an absolute disgrace.
And in a democracy.
In a democracy, running from a duel is just common sense. We'd call the police. But going bankrupt, that is the ultimate public shame.
Because it hurts the entire system of trust.
It hurts the commercial trust that society is built on. But Tocqueville goes even further here into real speculation. He wonders what happens in the distant future.
What's his prediction?
He speculates that as the world becomes more and more uniform, as all the differences between people and nations vanish and everyone becomes like everyone else, the very concept of a distinct special code of honor might disappear entirely.
And we'll just be left with what?
Simple, universal notions of right and wrong, good and evil, utility. But the theatrical, special, caste-based code of honor, that idea that there are certain things you just do because of who you are, that might just evaporate into thin air.
That is a haunting thought. A world without the drama of honor. Just utility.
Utility and mildness. But, and here's a major ban, however, there's one place where the old drama, the old ambition, remains, and that's the military.
Segment 3. This really felt like a very specific and very urgent warning. He talks about the democratic dilemma of war.
It is.
And it seems like a contradiction at first. He just spent all this time telling us we're mild, we're commercial, we're peace-loving.
It's a structural contradiction. Democratic citizens absolutely love peace. They're commercial people. War disrupts business, it threatens property, it destroys that well-being they're always striving for. The average citizen wants nothing to do with it.
But the democratic army?
The army desires war. And again, Tocqueville explains this through the mechanics of social climbing. It's all about the career path.
Okay, break that down.
In an aristocratic army, an officer is usually a nobleman. He has status, he has wealth, completely outside of the army. If he sees a captain for 20 years, he's still his rank is almost a side gig to his birthright. He doesn't need a war to be somebody.
But in a democracy?
In a democracy, the officer is usually a man of modest means. His military rank is his entire social standing. His salary is his only real wealth. And in peacetime, promotion in a democratic army is based almost entirely on seniority.
So it's incredibly slow.
Agonizingly slow.
Yeah.
You just have to wait for the guy above you to retire or die of old age.
So you have all these ambitious men stuck in a stagnant hierarchy.
Exactly. But war changes everything. War breaks the seniority line. War kills the guy above you. War creates vacancies. War allows for rapid advancement and glory.
So you end up with this incredibly dangerous dynamic.
You have a peaceful nation that contains within it an army that secretly, or maybe not so secretly, longs for the chaos of conflict just so its members can get a raise and a promotion.
That is genuinely chilling. It creates this huge rift between civil society and the military society living inside it. And he pinpoints a specific group that he thinks is the most dangerous, right?
The non-commissioned officers.
Yes.
The NCOs. The sergeants.
Why them?
He says they are the most restless and the most dangerous. The general has already made it. He has a reputation to protect. The private soldier is often just passing through. He wants to get his service done and go back to his farm or his job. But the NCO, he's chosen the military life, but he doesn't have the status of an officer yet. He is hungry.
He's stuck in the middle?
He's stuck in the middle, and Tocqueville warns that this kind of institutional restlessness can lead to a military government.
But he's very clear that this isn't a return to a warrior king, right? It's not Genghis Khan taking over.
No, and this is where he makes a brilliant connection between the military and the bureaucracy. He fears a society that is run like a barracks. He calls it a fusion of the clerk and the soldier.
A society, that is. What?
Regular, absolute, uniform, and disciplined, but stripped of all the messy, unpredictable freedom of civilian life.
Which brings us to the gravitational pull of the entire book. Segment 4, the centralization of power. Tocqueville seems to think that centralization isn't just a political policy choice, but a deep psychological need in a democracy.
It's almost a law of physics for him. Think about the geometry of power in the two systems. In an aristocracy, you have all these intermediary powers.
I hear those.
The nobles, the guilds, the powerful provinces, the bishoprics. There are all these little bumps in the road. They're unequal, absolutely, but they stop the central king from just doing whatever he wants.
They're like speed bumps for tyranny.
That's a perfect analogy. But democracy. Democracy smooths out all the bumps. It creates a vast, flat plane of equal individuals. And when you stand on that plane by yourself, you feel very, very small.
And those individuals feel weak.
Incredibly weak. Tocqueville says that in a democracy, the individual looks at himself and sees nothing but weakness. He looks at his neighbor and sees, well, just another weak person like himself. But then he looks up at the state.
And the state seems huge.
He sees this immense, magnificent, powerful entity. It is the only thing standing tall on the entire landscape.
So it's only natural that we turn to the state to solve our problems.
We do. But there's another darker reason we turn to the state. We do it because we hate our neighbor having power.
Wait, hate the neighbor, that sounds a bit strong.
Okay, maybe jealousy is a better word. Tocqueville argues that democratic citizens have a burning, passionate hatred of privilege. If my neighbor has some kind of special local power, say he's the only one who can decide where the new road goes, I resent that. I think, why him? He's no better than me.
So
I would much rather a distant, anonymous, central government official decide where the road goes for everyone.
So we prefer equality and servitude to inequality and freedom.
That is the dark side of the democratic passion for equality, yes. We prefer a single master above us all rather than many small masters among us. And so the state just grows and grows.
It takes over everything.
It takes over charity, it takes over education, it takes over finance. Tocqueville also notes that things like wars and revolutions massively accelerate this process because they require huge centralized effort, and once the state grabs that power, it very rarely gives it back.
He also mentions an industrial threat here. The government starts to look at big corporations and associations as potential rivals.
Yes, as industry grows, it naturally creates these new pockets of power. Big companies, big labor unions, big associations. The state, which is now obsessed with uniformity, feels the need to regulate them, oversee them, and eventually dominate them.
It wants to be the only game in town.
It wants to be the only game in town. It wants every single citizen to be equally and directly dependent on the center.
Okay, so let's look at the board. We have the softening of mores, so we dislike conflict. We have the loss of great ambition, so we crave comfort. We have this restless military that desires order. And we have this massive, ongoing centralization of power.
All the pieces are in place.
All of this is leading to the climax of his entire argument. Segment 5, the new despotism.
This is, and I don't think it's an exaggeration, one of the most famous and profound passages in the history of political philosophy. And Tocqueville struggles to even find a name for it. He says the old words, tyranny, despotism, they don't quite fit.
Because when we hear tyranny, we think of a boot stamping on a human face forever. We think of the Gulag or a Roman emperor lopping off heads.
Exactly. He's not talking about violence. He's talking about administrative despotism. And he paints this picture of a supreme power that is absolute, minute, regular, provident, and mild.
There's that word again. Mild. It just keeps coming back like a ghost.
It's the key to the whole trap. He uses that famous analogy of the shepherd and the flock. The government becomes the shepherd and the people. The people become a flock of timid and industrious animals.
Timid and industrious. That's not exactly the give me liberty or give me death vibe, is it?
Not even close. And here's the mechanism of how it works. This power provides for our security. It supplies our necessities. It facilitates our pleasures. It manages our principal concerns. It hovers over every single aspect of our lives, not to kill us or torture us, but simply to guide us.
So he asks, what's left for us, the citizens, to actually do?
And he answers with that devastating quote. The state works to spare us all the care of thinking and all the trouble of living.
Wow.
The ultimate goal of this soft despotism is to keep us in a state of perpetual childhood. A good parent prepares a child for adulthood, for independence. This power wants us to remain children forever, happy, entertained, safe, but utterly dependent. It wants us to rejoice, provided we think of nothing but rejoicing.
And it creates an illusion of freedom, right? Because we still get to vote.
Yes, that's the release valve. Tocqueville says we console ourselves with the thought that we elected the shepherd. We tell ourselves, I am free because I chose the very person who is going to control every detail of my life.
He has that line, it's just devastating, about how we emerge from dependency for a moment to indicate our master and then return to it.
It's just a piercing critique of modern bureaucracy. He argues that this kind of despotism doesn't break our wills, not like a violent tyranny would. It doesn't shatter them. It softens the will. It bends it. It guides it. It rarely forces you to act, but it constantly prevents you from acting on your own. It slowly extinguishes the spark of individual agency until the entire nation is just a well-regulated, smoothly running machine.
It sounds like a comfortable stupor, a regulated stupor. It's basically the nightmare of Brave New World, but he wrote it a century before Huxley.
That is the danger. It's a cage, but the bars are made of gold and safety and comfort, and the door is locked from the inside.
So, is it hopeless? Is this just the inevitable fate of democracy? Because if this is where the river flows, why even try to swim against the current?
But he wasn't a nihilist.
So he offers remedies. Segment 6.
He's not a fatalist. He's a realist, but he believes profoundly in the power of human will. He says very clearly, we cannot rebuild aristocracy. We can't go back. That world is gone forever. We have to find a way to be free within this new democratic reality.
And how do we do that? What are the tools he gives us?
The first and by far the most important remedy is associations. This is his big solution.
Okay.
In an aristocracy, a single powerful individual, a duke, is strong enough to stand up to the king all by himself. He has land, he has a private army, he has money. He is a natural counterweight to the central power.
But in a democracy, a single citizen is just us.
A single citizen is completely powerless against the immense power of the state. So the citizen has to combine with other citizens. If 1,000 people join together to form an association.
It could be anything.
Anything. A political club, a scientific society, a business union, even a local gardening club. By joining together, they create what he calls an artificial aristocrat.
An artificial aristocrat. I love that phrase.
Isn't it great? They create a new body that is strong enough to push back against the state, to have a voice, to create a space for independent thought and action.
So joining the local PTA or starting a neighborhood watch group isn't just a hobby. In Tocqueville's eyes, that is a fundamental act of political resistance against despotism.
In Tocqueville's eyes, yes, absolutely. It is the gym where you exercise the muscles of liberty. He says that feelings and ideas are renewed, the heart is enlarged, and the human mind is developed only by the reciprocal action of men upon one another.
So anytime you solve a problem with your neighbors instead of calling a government agency.
You are strengthening that social muscle. You are proving in a small way that you don't need the shepherd for everything.
He also puts a lot of faith in the press.
The liberty of the press. He calls it the democratic instrument of liberty. It's essential. In a world of isolated individuals, how do you find the other people who think like you? You can't see them. The press is the only way to appeal to the nation as a whole, or even to humanity.
It's like a beacon.
It's the beacon that allows all those scattered, isolated people to find each other and form those crucial associations in the first place.
And his third safeguard, the courts, the judicial power.
This is the final barrier. The state, the administration, always moves according to general interests and big, sweeping, uniform rules. It loves uniformity, it hates exceptions. But the courts are focused on the particular.
On the individual.
On the individual. They're there to listen to the specific complaint of one specific citizen against the giant machine. Tocqueville sees the formalities of the law, which we sometimes find annoying and slow as essential buffers. They force the state to slow down. They force the giant to listen to the dwarf.
So associations, a free press, and an independent judiciary. Those are the tools to keep the monster at bay.
They are. And notice, they all require active, constant effort. They don't just happen automatically. The natural flow of democracy is always toward that soft despotism. Gravity is pulling us down toward the comfortable stupor. The art of democracy is to consciously build these dams to hold it back.
Which brings us to the end, to the outro, and to Tocqueville's final verdict. After thousands of pages, after exploring the geography, the laws, the manners, the soul of America, what's his final conclusion?
His conclusion is profoundly ambivalent. He is torn. He looks at the democratic world, and he sees that maybe greatness is gone. We might never again see the soaring heights of aristocratic glory or art. The poetry might be less epic, the ambition less grand.
It's a trade-off.
It is a trade-off, but he says that in the eyes of God, perhaps the widespread, mediocre comfort of the many is better than the sublime greatness of the few. Misery is less common, justice is more widespread, happiness is more available to the average person. He tries his best to accept this.
But he leaves the ball in our court, doesn't he?
He ends with a powerful challenge about the will of nations. He says that the nations of our time cannot prevent conditions from becoming equal. That part is inevitable. We're not going back to the Middle Ages. But it depends entirely on them, on us, whether that equality leads to servitude or liberty, to enlightenment or barbarism, to prosperity or to misery.
It's not written in the stars. It's written in our choices.
Exactly. The mirror he holds up shows us a tendency, a powerful current, but not an inescapable destiny.
So here is the question we want to leave you with today. Tocqueville's greatest fear was that we would willingly trade our liberty for a comfortable, safe, regulated stupor. He feared we would let the shepherd take care of everything so we could just relax and enjoy ourselves.
The trouble of living.
So look at your own life. Look at the apps on your phone, the way you interact with the government, the things you asked society to solve for you. Have we already made that trade? Or are we still willing to take on the trouble of living for ourselves?
That really is the question of the century.
Thanks for listening to this deep dive into Tocqueville's Democracy in America. We'll see you next time.